Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another episode of the Bot Lobby Podcast. I'm Grandmaster Gojj. This is Katie, and today is an emergency episode because the Call of Duty League Resurgence Rebirth $100,000 tournament. Some of the CDL teams started announcing, well, some of the players that they're playing with. It's a little bit crazy. There's been some transitions, and we have our qualifier teams. I'm here to break it all down with Katie, of course, but we have our very special guest. Katie, introduce our amazing guest today that decided to hop on 5 minutes before we started.
Well, he's a legend for that, and he's a legend in Warzone. We're bringing on Unrational to talk with us about the teams, his teams, the teams that have been announced, the qualification teams who went through the gauntlet of the open stage and the qual stage. Some of those players actually in chat right now to kind of go over things and his thoughts about everything that's been happening as all these teams start to announce. So welcome, Gary.
Yeah, Gary.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me.
First of all, how you feeling? I know your team has not technically announced yet, but as you start seeing some of these teams start releasing, I feel like we should just let the cat out of the bag immediately with the LA Thieves. I mean, we all know we're confused / excited / really frustrated by the fact that Almond is playing with 100 Thieves. So give us your thoughts.
I mean, honestly, like, it wouldn't have been a real competition if they weren't playing together, as we all know. And I mean, like, I know personally, from a competitive standpoint, I don't care who I'm playing against. It doesn't, like, there's no standout team ever. It's like I want to win, and I want to win at the best, like at the same way that everybody's playing at the highest competition. You know, I don't want an easy way into the win. It's like, I feel like 100% they should be playing together, and it makes sense that they're playing together. So I'm honestly glad to see it, but at the same time, the way that some of these teams in the pools are placed is just it's heinous.
Well,
it's heinous.
let's talk about it. We only have a couple teams announced. We want to walk through some of our qualifier teams as well, because those teams really earn their right to be here. I think the general consensus, which is the pool that you're in, Group A, is unreal stacked.
Great. That's a demon.
It's bad. I mean, you even DM me, and I know we were trolling a little bit, but like, did they do this on purpose? I think there's a real conversation we could have. Let me read out the teams in.
The answer to that, by the way.
Oh, you do? Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, let's read out the teams in Semi A first. Then we'll go to B later. But let's talk about A, because I know this is a big point of contention. We have LA Thieves, which is of course TBE plus rated, which makes a lot of sense. They're going to be fantastic. We have NYSL. You can only imagine that's Aiden's squad. You know, somebody like a Z-Smith is probably a part of that group. We'll see who some of the others are. You have Paris Legion. I'll be curious to see who they end up bringing on. You've got Optic Texas. I would assume you're going to see somebody like Z-Laner on that list. You have LAG. You're going to see Unrational on that list. You're going to potentially see the people he always plays with. You know, hint, hint, wink, wink, probably. Florida Mutineers. I mean, they're going to have a great squad. Then you have your qual teams. You've got Grev's team, fantastic squad. Dad Bods, incredibly.
You really just left out Paris like that. Damn.
No, I did say it. I said Paris. We don't know who they are yet. Yeah, we don't know who the players are yet. Team Diverge, very solid team, and then Jackal's team, very solid team. So, like, I mean, when you look at it, Semi A, comparatively, based on what we know and the people we suspect to play on those teams, that's like the best Warzone players in the game right now.
Right, and I take a look at this, and so a little bit of a spoiler. Since I write articles with CDL, I know the teams. So some of them are announced. I can't say all of them, but I can confirm to what Gary said, to what Gojj has said, in that Semi A is by far the hyper stacked semi for these groups. Now, there's 20 total teams. There's going to be 10 in each group. Only 5 can make it out of these groups to go on to the final. Semi A is going to be a gauntlet for a lot of these teams. Yeah. And on top of that, the teams the teams were assigned, the CDL teams rather, were assigned randomly to these groups.
Like officially random?
It was random, yes.
I don't know what kind of whack pull that was. That was crazy.
So it was random, you said? Completely
yes, it was
random.
It was random, yeah. Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Look,
sorry, buddy.
Saying if you're a team in Group B that is perhaps, one might say, a better team, you're feeling really good about your chances to get top 5.
Yeah, I mean, Gary, break it down from what you can say here. I'll show you guys the groups. I'm gonna close Gary's face out, and I think you'll be able to see the groups on our screen. CDL did tweet it, so you can see Semi A and Semi B. Let's see if this works. I'm so professional with this. Oh yeah, look at that. Yeah. Boom. That is right there. We're in there. You can see there's Semi A, LA Thieves, Subliners, Legion, and then Semi B. They're both on your screen right now. So there you go.
This is another one of those things too, where I feel like, wait, do we know if they're played at the same time, both groups, or are they played at different times?
I think they go one after the other, if I remember correctly. That's how they did it in the qualifiers as well, leading up to the event. Especially with it being only
I would
4 or 5
imagine
games.
just based on how CDL works in general, and based on how CDLR is playing out, it wouldn't make sense for them to be at the same time. I cannot imagine they would be.
Yeah.
Especially if it's broadcasting, you're going to want to be able to catch all of them. So I imagine, especially since it's Rebirth, and depending on how many games there are, those can go pretty quickly. If you had both of them stacked, it'd probably be over a little too fast.
It's like
so
an hour and a half.
You can assume it's probably going to be Semi A and then Semi B. Obviously, we need to wait to hear all the details, but assume one and then the other.
I feel like a good equivalent is like, I feel like Group A is like the finale, and then Group B is like an open qualifier.
Dang, bro. All right, let's jump on that topic. We can't. Katie knows all the teams, and I don't know them all. I don't know, Gary, you might know most of them, but let's talk just in general. Who are the best Rebirth players, or players in general, right? Like, we've seen TBE obviously put up great numbers in Rebirth tournaments, but who are the Rebirth players who are like, these people are going to be picked up by a team? The question is, where do they fit into the puzzle pieces? Like, who are those names on your top of your list?
Right. So I know I'm gonna miss a couple, which is gonna hurt. And like, if I do miss anybody's name that is in the chat or anything, I do apologize, because I'm not forgetting. My memory just fails me sometimes.
Sure.
I mean, Dill, obviously best Rebirth player ever. Dill would be number one. And then, I mean, Scummin is a top Rebirth player. You know, one of the most talented players in the game just in general. But he is mine, and nobody can have him.
Look at you, Noob.
Gorb is a freaking beast. That guy's cracked. I actually played like a smaller Rebirth training with him, and he's pretty good. I don't know how they'll play against against the top competitors, because it was like a smaller Rebirth training, but I know he's good and he's cracked. So excited to see who he gets picked up by, and like how they do. Knight, obviously, he's been popping off recently in Rebirth. And I mean, for people that genuinely like grind Rebirth all day, I don't really know.
Yeah.
Honestly, besides that, like those are like the main people that stand out to me. I mean, Finessin, but I think he qualified, right?
Yeah. And I'll pull up some of the qualifier teams. We can talk through those squads, because I know you'll have some opinions on those players. But like, I mean, we both agree. I think we've talked about this before on podcast, Katie, as well as even in DMs and stuff, about like, there is this overarching conversation that's still lingering about of like Rebirth players versus Caldera players, and can Caldera players compete with Rebirth players on Rebirth, or vice versa. And it's been proven now 2-3 times that both can stand. It's just about who's good at playing Warzone, right? Like, it depends on the format, it depends on scoring, of course, but at the end of the day, like, TBE is going to be near the top. Scummin is going to be at the top. Like, all of these names that we've seen in Caldera, you're going to see them near the top of the leaderboards in most of these Rebirth events, right? I mean, is there any other, like, we'll talk about some of those qualifier teams, but is there any other, like, Caldera names you're like, oh, they easily can perform in the Rebirth Island? No question.
I mean, Aiden is also one of the most like mechanically gifted gamers ever. You just kind of can do whatever he wants, and like it works out. Recently, he's kind of been in like a I don't know if he's just not passionate right now, because like I know he has the skill. I don't know what's going on there. I am curious, but I feel like he's another person. If he's on his game, like he's 100% going to be at the top 2, obviously. One person I don't know about is like Super Evan. He's obviously like Super Evan and Biffle, obviously very, very good. Biffle just recently started dabbling into Rebirth more, but I know Evan like hates Rebirth. Like, I know Evan hates Rebirth, so I don't even know if he's, you know, even would want to play in this tournament, or if he ends up.
To be fair though, in the Baka Rebirth, they did do very well.
Oh yeah, they ended up getting like a crazy game at the end and winning, right?
Yeah, they took third.
Yeah, my Baka Bros experience was great towards the start, and towards the end, my teammate started losing hair, and you know, we had a couple 0-point games because of certain circumstances.
Sure. That's a good way to say that. I mean, that's a great question. I mean, again, Katie, you can't tell us anything. Don't leak anything so that you don't get in trouble. But I would assume for $100,000, whether you like Rebirth or not, you're going to see Super Evan playing again. You're going to see Biffle playing, and they probably go together. So the only like variables that you would think of is like, okay, do they go pair up with Aiden in NYSL, or do they go play with probably Swag at FaZe, right? Like that's really the only two locations that make sense in my brain for those two guys. And I tend to lean FaZe because of the relationship with the FaZe Nuke Squad and stuff like that. I mean,
I'd agree 100%.
We'll see, certainly, but I think that's a really good team in the B side of things. And then when you start looking at like Ravens, I mean, Juki's probably playing for Ravens, right? He's signed by the Ravens, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't know who he'll be playing with. Are we going to see?
Don't imagine FIFA.
I know you would expect you would see FIFA on that team to play with him. I would assume he would also, depending on whether they're playing with CDL players, and this will be the next question or the conversation is
delightful.
Yeah, I mean, do they pick up Lennon as well, or Rob? I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of question marks on who they could pick up and who they could play with. But okay, here's another big question for all of us.
Cut in very quickly before we get to that question.
Yes.
Thank you to Clint, by the way. And New York did just announce their roster. So speaking to what you just mentioned, it is in fact Aiden, Z Smith, Dill, and Knight will be their duo. For the Rebirth Resurgence.
Okay, so that answers two things for us, right? That means NYSL took Dill, who Gary says is the best Rebirth player, period, and I think most people would agree with you. And they also took Knight, who is amongst that conversation, which then probably solidifies the fact that you're going to see Biffle and you're going to see Super Evan over with FaZe. Wow.
Yeah. That does tend to slot things into place. I think that is a very good assumption. Interestingly enough, Gojj, on the FIFA note, keep in mind for these CDLR, at least this opening kind of tournament that they're doing, this is NA only. So for people like a Juki's, for example, they would need to be in NA for this, as would someone like FIFA.
Oh, wait okay.
Really?
Wait, I forgot.
So if they are in it, yes, you have to be in NA.
Juki's is in North America now. I forgot about that.
Yes, he is, which would probably lend even more credence to the fact that if he is in NA right now, this event happens very quickly. You can assume, and he's with London, almost a given that he's going to be on that roster.
So who is Scraps in NA?
That's a good question. Beef is not.
He's not anymore.
No, he was, but not anymore. That makes so much more sense why he's doing his NA tour right now.
And Ewok says Wars is going to Breadman's house next week. Okay, these are some other potential teasers. I mean, it's very safe to assume at this point, if there are EU players who are coming to NA anytime soon, and eBay says can confirm there are more EU players coming to NA, then if they are here right now in NA, it's safe to assume they're going to be in one of these teams.
Yeah, especially if they're traveling just for a week or whatever.
If you see a bunch of EU players be like, can't wait to come to North America this week and like this weekend, they're for sure playing in this tournament somewhere. The question is where. So if Wars is going to be there, he could be a pickup for Ravens. He could also be a pickup for like Legion, maybe like some of the other like EU based teams that will be playing with an NA squad. It probably makes sense for them to cater to some of the EU players traveling in, right? Interesting.
I mean, I would think you would have to assume, especially like you do. So 12 of these teams of the total 20, it's 8 qual teams and 12 CDL teams, which means, yes, as you said, there's going to be those EU teams like London and of course like Paris. So it would also make sense, good educated guesses, to assume that EU players, especially maybe players who play together, will be on teams as duos within those foursomes, but they'll most likely be on those EU teams.
Okay, so we have official rosters. We have Surge, which is a big one. That's Brolic, Exact, Foreign Jace, and Kins. We stand, by the way, Kins getting signed by Surge. Let's just shout that out right now. She's legit, and that quad is actually really, really solid. I like that team a lot. We
Wait,
also
did she get signed by Surge?
no, I'm saying
Well,
she should get
but
signed.
it's a great talking point, right? Because you sit there and look at it. We have seen every tournament I see Kenzen, she's rocking Seattle Surge camos. She consistently is interacting with them on Twitter. There has been a bit of a lull for a while in general pickups by CDL teams for competitive and content creators in the Warzone space. And she is playing under the Seattle Surge banner. If there was ever more indicators that she is or should be signing with Seattle, if they're smart, then I mean, what more do you want than this?
Yeah.
You know, one thing I'm salty about is that I never got reached out to by Seattle. I am the only competitive Warzone player that lives here. like
is
literally
so
the only one.
That's fair.
I didn't even think about that. I mean, you know, LAG is like that far away from you, but
I love LAG too. I mean, I'm sure they treat me a lot better than Surge would have, because I honestly can't. I can't. I don't think I could be treated any better. Is my point, though.
I love
It's not a diss to Surge. I just love LAG. But the fact that I didn't ever get reached out to or anything, I am definitely salty about.
yeah, that is so interesting. I didn't even consider that.
If they make it into those 10 total teams going into the final, you can slam them there, Gary. Get your revenge.
True. Okay, so yeah, we've got our so far the announced teams. We got NYSL, we've got Surge, we have LAT. And is that it right now? I think technically. I mean, I would assume, Gary, you could just nod your head yes or no if you're playing with Scummin and Huskers +1.
I mean, I've said multiple times already. I've said it on stream. I am playing with Scummin, and that's a given in any tournament. I'm playing with Scummin.
Sure.
I mean, it just so happens Apathy is a part of LAG. I'm not sure if he's on our team though.
Okay.
I don't know if he's on our team. You know,
Okay.
we'll find out once it's announced. And I mean, like, me, Scum, and the Huskers have been a nasty trio, and I don't think I could. If we weren't playing together, I probably would have played it in qualifier. So I'm just gonna go ahead and assume that us three are playing together.
Yeah.
Especially if you take a look at how LA Thieves have played out, the consistent duos and trios are the ones that all seem to be playing together. For example, Almond, Noobs, and Tommy. So if it was a world where it was Huskers, Scummin, and Unrational, that would be the least surprising outcome.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I mean,
Not sure if that's the team though.
Yeah, sure. We don't know who the fourth is technically, but it does make sense if we follow the you know, the people that are actually signed. Now, that to be fair though, that's not technically true for a lot of these teams, right? I mean, if you look at Surge that announced Brolic, Exact, Foreign Jace, Kins, 0 of those players are signed by Surge as of today. Now, tomorrow that may change, I don't know. But as of today, 0 of those players are signed by Surge. So when you start talking about that overarching conversation, it sounds like it was totally up to the CDL teams on what they wanted to do. Because you might see Optic come out with people that aren't... I mean, we can only assume Z-Laner is going to be playing, like a Sabas is going to be playing. I doubt they get Teep. But, like, you know, the people that are signed, right? But that's not necessarily the case. So it kind of is wide open to see who can play.
Well, yeah, it doesn't always fit in, right? Because you take a look at New York, and Swish is not a part of that lineup.
Sure.
And so there's definitely some kind of question marks you can add up. In teams like Minnesota, while we do know that Almond is playing with Thieves, we don't necessarily know if something's going on with Smixy. They also have Blast, who is signed on the side of, we've mentioned before, when you go down to Mutineers, they have people like Queen and Jessie Jade and others. So there's a lot of options. We'll have to see how it all plays out. But there's definitely, it seems to be some formulas you can follow relatively safely. And I think, at least for Gorillas, that certainly is one that makes sense.
I mean, one thing I was going to point this out, but I don't know where I was going with this, but I'm going to go ahead and continue to point it out. One thing, actually, no, I'm going to say this instead. Bobby did announce that he's not in the tourney. Okay. Bobby did say that he's not in the tourney, which is one of the most shocking things to me. Bobby's, you know, surfaces content around Rebirth for how long now? I mean, literally since Verdansk, he mainly still played Rebirth. So it's crazy to me that, you know, Bobby's not playing for Optic. And yeah, I doubt Teep will play, because Teep just doesn't really play tournaments. I mean, when was the last tournament that Teep played? He says he hates them, and, you know, they're not really for him. So we can X those out. But yeah, Z-Laner is definitely 100%. I'm curious to see if Z-Laner will pick up like Destroy.
Yeah.
Right. That would make sense.
Yes, and then I don't know. I actually have no idea where they would go with that because there's plenty of content. Optic has a lot of content creators. I mean,
People like Holly was recently signed. There's a lot, like Sabas
Yeah,
as well.
Sebas,
Like,
yeah.
there's a lot
Holly's
of people you could
still
pick from, but as we know, Bobby not gonna be
Yeah,
playing.
I mean, and when you start thinking about, we had this conversation before we got started about like the old guard of Rebirth versus the new guard. When I say old guard, I mean like original people that grinded Rebirth even when everybody was hype on Verdansk. Plus, you could even take it one step back further into Blackout, the people that were grinding Blackout before this. I mean, you know, Dill is on that list. Dill was like setting records in Blackout before he came to Rebirth. Was like the first player to drop a 40 bomb on Rebirth, if I remember correctly. I mean, he has been a demon on Rebirth forever. And then you have
with
this.
Finessin.
Yeah.
Finessin's another one of those people.
Yes.
Yep, exactly. And then you have the like new guard, which are some of the like what I'll call like YouTuber or the TikTokers that have been grinding Rebirth as well, who are demons in their own right, slaying out lobbies and getting high kills, but they're more like new agey. And you know, we have some people like slightly in between, like a Knight or a Gorb maybe, but I don't know. I'll be really curious to see who gets picked up for those. Do we want to take a second and kind of talk through unless we see a announcement in chat, let us know if you guys see another tweet go out, because we've only seen like 3 or 4 so far. Let's go ahead and talk through the qualifying teams, because
They did.
What'd you say?
Okay. November is saying they just tweeted the rosters. Oh, perfect. We can talk about all of them because they just tweeted out a link
Who
to
tweeted
all of the rosters.
What?
It's in chat. I linked it. It's in chat. It's not the tweet, but it's what the tweet sends you to. So there we go, guys.
I don't think the
Love
link is.
rosters.
I don't think it lets you post links. I'll like mod you, Katie, so that you can
Does it
post.
not let me post it? Oh,
Oh,
let me
my-
post the link.
Hey, my bad. I'll post it for us. Call of
Yes, I'll post
Duty.
the link.
They tweeted out all of the. Wait, where?
They just go to Call of Duty. It's the most recent. It's a response. It says check out the team rosters, and it has a link to the website.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. They weren't intending to do this, right?
I don't know, but I'm staring at all of the teams right now.
I'm here for it. All right, let's pull them all up. No more
Well,
conjecturing.
Wait, I don't see it still.
Can you
I
let
found
me
it, I
link it,
found it, I
please?
found
I'm linking it. I'm linking it. Here's the link. Here's the
But
link.
to answer the question there, you guys, please go ahead and click on that link. Take a look at these groups. And well, if we want to have a discussion about Group A, you saw it. Aiden's team. We know New York. We know Thieves. Optic Texas. Sebas, Holly, Z-Laner, and Karma. Gorillas, Apathy Huskers, Unrational, and Scummin. Florida Mutineers, Willet, Dav, Patty, Vivid, and Skies. Paris Legion, as we talked about potentially some of those EU players, Skullface, Wars, Otter Eyes, and Valid Hands. And then the 4 teams, take a note, guys, on either side of these groups, the last 4 teams on either group are the teams that came through the qualification stage. So in this case, Grevenco, Dadbods, Team Diverge, Jackal will be in Group A, whereas Tiberius, Haha, Underrated, and Goats will be in Group B.
Unreal. I have it up on the screen for like just a second, but you guys should pull up that link so we can look at Gary's beautiful face. All right, let's walk through this because we just conjectured everything. Gary leaked. It was Apathy. Nobody could have ever guessed that.
Yes.
And then I want to walk through those qual teams because there's some demons on those teams. Shout out to Dadbods and others that are in chat as well. Okay, biggest surprises from this list, Gary. You want to look through it? I mean,
Are we talking about from CDL
yeah,
team standpoint? or
CDLs
from...
that just got announced. Yeah.
Phase is about
so-
to cruise control through Group B, and I'm saying that right now.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to agree with Katie on that one. FaZe will 100% cruise control through Group B. One team that actually is like surprising me, but does make sense is Juki's team. He's playing with Gizmo, Afro, and Nasty, and that's like, I mean, obviously not Warzone players besides Juki's. So I'm curious to see how they'll go.
Yep.
They'll probably qualify because it's not that sweaty of a bracket at all. I mean, you have Rocker picked up Looney, Standy, Priestess, and Blast. You would have thought Smixy would be in there, or maybe Racine would have picked up another Warzone player or something. But I mean, that team will still do decent though. Well, with Almond being gone, I'm 100% on the same page as Ben though. I'm not playing without my trio, especially one as successful as they have
It's gonna
been.
make me laugh forever, Gary.
I'm saying right now, if I couldn't have played with Scum and Huskers, we would have just played the qualifier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm 100% with Ben on that one. So it's like not super surprising. And then obviously they have Raid as a 4th, who I think is a Halo pro or something like that. No.
Yeah. That guy doesn't play this game anyways, to be honest.
But no, it makes sense. They have Raided, obviously. Surge. I know. Yeah, I know. Ken's was able to build the roster there, and she picked up a a super crack team.
Ken's built that roster?
Ken's did. I know Ken's tweeted out a while ago saying that she needed 3 for the CDLR like semis.
Seattle picked her up as their team captain.
Bro, I'm telling you, she's gonna get signed.
They're definitely there is 100% likelihood that Seattle Surge signs get.
I'm here for it big time. I'm gonna
100%.
I'm gonna like mess around with the overlay here to bring up the teams as well as Gary on screen. But I want to talk about that Optic roster.
Yeah, the Optic roster is what I mean. Honestly, it does upset me, not seeing Big Bob and knowing how many hours he like. I mean, Bob has more hours on Rebirth than this entire page. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so it is upsetting to see. I'm sure he got asked to play it, but like just didn't want to. You know what I mean?
Like, do we have info on that, Katie? Like, do you have any info? Because now that all the teams are announced, I don't think there's anything that you can't say. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm well. Okay, use your best judgment. Do we have any info on why Bob's not playing?
I can conjecture a conflict.
Yeah, he's maybe doing something else. Because
I've heard Swag when it came to the 50K final event for that Boom TV had a conflict come up. I do believe it was within that nature. Less so, I think, him not wanting to play, and more so there was just something else that came up that he can't play because of that.
Maybe.
I mean, Bobby has just said that he doesn't like playing in tournaments anymore. I mean, as somebody, I've actually talked to Bobby about this specifically. I don't want to like say everything because I don't know what. I mean, usually what we talk about stuff, it is on stream and it doesn't really matter. But Bobby has said he doesn't really like playing in tournaments anymore. And one thing that like I'm thinking is I'm sure Bob would want to build his own team. He loves playing with Dill. He loves playing with Finessin. And the fact that he wouldn't be able to play with either of them is probably another like sign on why he wouldn't want to play it. I'm sure he didn't want to just go in and then go in with a random squad and
that makes sense.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, I've had the same combo with him about how he's been really full sending on content. I mean, not a lot of people would pass up 100K. So whether it's personal or just not wanting to play, that's totally fair and up to him. I think that Optic team, to be honest, will struggle with lack of chemistry. I mean, obviously, all 4 of those players are good at the game. Like, I mean,
I'm married.
But it's not chemistry wise. It's like just not there. Like,
no,
Holly and Karma have great chemistry.
Okay,
they actually have a child.
I mean,
daughter with chemistry, but no. To your point, Gojj, I think when it comes to you're talking about, there's no set duo to lean on within this.
Yeah,
there's no set trio within this for you to point to. There's players who individually are all good. Karma is a question mark because we know how good Karma is, but at the same time, like, has he been playing Rebirth? Has he been playing Warzone? What has he been doing? Like, has he been just playing Warzone and Rust? Like, you know what I mean? This is somewhere like that they have talent, but it just really seems like a mishmash compared to a lot of the other teams.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like David's one of those people that could not touch COD for a year, get on for 30 minutes, and still be one of the greatest to ever do it. And that's just who he is. I think he'll play fine throughout the tournament. And then especially on something like that where it's more, I mean, Rebirth is more of like a multiplayer based type thing, and that's obviously a specialty. I feel like he'll be one of the top. No shit. I mean, sorry. I don't know if we can.
Yes. You can.
Okay. But I'm sure he'll actually be towards the top in like kill wise, even with the team without chemistry, just as a solo player. I'm sure he'll be towards the top just because he is Damon Barlow.
So that's such a good question. I mean, totally agree, and I think it's feasible for that team to do really well even in the dynamic semis A. Like, guys can look at the A pool now yourself and don't just believe us when we say how stacked it is. I mean, certainly looking at some of those teams, it's unbelievably stacked. And some of the other things that we had mentioned could be the case. Wars did end up going over to Paris Legion, playing with Skullface, Autorize, and Valid Hands. That's a very strong squad. And then our qual teams are very strong on that side as well. I really, looking at these team names or players competing, this even further solidifies the fact that Pool A is so much stronger, at least on paper.
Well, Gary, something I'm curious to ask you about, both in Group A and Group B, any insight or thoughts you may have on the players within those qual teams, because there are players like Ebates and DJ Mouse Finessin, Picnic Nick Cool, so on, that we are all familiar with. There are, however, a lot of names that at least personally I am not quite as familiar with. So are there any names on that side of the spectrum, people that people might not know as well that you do, that you can offer some insight on from these qual teams?
I mean, FaZe Blue Lovey, Zepti, Lonard. I don't know the Lonard. I don't know who that is, but I know the other three are cracked, and they're obviously really good. That'll be probably one of the qualifying teams from Group B. But from the other qualifying teams, Xenon, IQ, Picnic, Nick Cool, very good team as well. But from the other two, Underrated and Haha, I don't know any of those guys from the Group B side, which is very. What was that?
No, that's just interesting that maybe in that regard, there is kind of an unknown for a lot of the kind of top tier competitive players.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, another thing too I'd like to point out is the main way to get into the qualifier off rip was from a TKR, was it not? I believe it was, right?
Yeah, so it started with, there was a couple different stages. So it started with in-game playlist TKR, essentially. You would log into the game, you would just slam as many kills as possible. There was a lot of question marks around whether people were using VPNs. We talked fairly extensively about this topic because there were a lot of people really frustrated by the fact that that was the way it was run. Then once the teams qualified, they were put into groups and played customs, and these are the teams that came out of those group stages.
How many stages of customs was it? Was it just one or two stages?
Two stages. So you had Group A, B, C, and D with 10 teams apiece, and the top teams from A and B, and then the top teams from C and D played in two separate groups, and now these are our top teams. So came down to a total of 8 teams that qualified for this section.
And I do know that Grevenco in Group A here and Tiberius in Group B were the top teams in their respective qualifying lobbies.
Yeah, I think they went back and forth.
Oh, okay. So is it in order? Like, so it's probably Grev's team up top, like first, Dadbod second, Diverge third.
Somebody can correct us.
I can't confirm that, but that would make sense if they're doing it in that order. But something that's interesting to me when I look at Grevenco, I mean, a lot of those names I'm not particularly familiar with. So if they're the top team in their qualifying lobby going into this, I'm really interested in seeing how they perform against people like Gary.
Okay. I've seen all those names. I mean, Grev is somebody who's played in a lot of tournaments. The other guys are kind of like, I don't actually know how good they are, but I have seen them in the tournaments. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I've seen their names.
I know all of those names fairly well, but only from like grassroots tournament stuff, right? Like coming up through the grassroots tournament scene and running a bunch of smaller events. All of those guys have played in even the events I ran back in the day, like freaking year ago. No, more than that, 18 plus months ago. They have played in some more events recently. I mean, even if you look at like big map stuff like Warzone earnings, all of them I believe are on that list at least in some capacity, but nothing like incredibly major. Like Prayers won some qualifiers back in the day for chain game stuff. Luxecution, I've seen that name a ton and has played in a number of our events, played in like a 3K and got second, qualifier win, like small tournaments back and forth. They're very talented and you could see them do fairly well. But the team I'm watching in Group A, I mean, we can start doing predictions for our top 5 teams from each because that's who makes to the finals. But I mean, the qualifier teams I'm really looking at is Dadbods in Group A, number 1, with Ebates, Ryda, DJ Moss, and Finessin. I know all of those players fairly well, if not personally. They're very talented. They play well together from what I saw from the quals. I mean, that team is gross.
They are a team that I expect to be in the 5 qualifying in Group A.
I think it's possible, for sure.
I mean, when you take a look at that, Gojj, if you want to talk about, well, what 5 teams are most likely to, I mean, you have to Group A, even though it is the demon group, you have Thieves. I think it is, if Gorillas, Subliners, and Thieves do not qualify, that's a letdown for all 3 of them. No, I'm serious. I mean, I know Gary's on Gorillas, but seriously, you are of the caliber and you play against this competition, but even though it's a hard group for sure, you should be qualifying. So I'm not as particularly worried about them. I also have to lean, again, when I look at that, Paris Legion. And I think, yes, dad bods would be, if I had to pick in Group A, would be my 5 that I would imagine qualifying. Then again, though, I have a huge information gap in a lot of those other qualifying teams.
Okay, Gary, what do you say? Top 5 teams from your pool.
I'd agree with Katie 100%. Thieves, Subliners, Gorillas, Legion, and Dadbots, probably.
Wow.
I'd say, yeah.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
I'll pull them back up on screen. You guys can look at the link as well. I mean, Finessing is... they're all twisted. Let's see. I keep closing out the wrong one because I don't label stuff. I think...
I will say, though, if Jackal gets carried, qualifies, and someone is forced to say Slimy Dookie on broadcast, that's going to be my favorite thing in the entire world.
Yeah, that's comedy. So, okay, this is my pick. I think I agree. I think LA Thieves, Subliners, Gorillas. I think there's a good chance if, like you said, they were just on that day, you could see Optic do well and potentially take that 4th or 5th spot. I think Paris Legion is very strong. Wars of Skullface and Otterize is disgusting. Valid Hands is gross in his own right. Adding on to those 3. Dad Bods is near the top of my list. I think the sleeper pick here, this Team Diverge team has low-key been very, very good throughout everything, whether it was the TKR into the group stages. I've really liked the way they've been playing together. They've been playing together for a long time, at least Aloha and De Niro and Intense. Those are the 3 I know better than Blicky. They're very good, and they played well in the customs as well as the TKR. They will have to be on number 1, and I know they also have a little bit of, at least Aloha Mai has a little bit of some ping issues. But then again,
he's Hawaii.
Yeah, he's Hawaii. Yeah. And when it's NA only, like that's about as far as you can go, right? Like you can't be further than that. I think they could sneak in there on a good day. They could certainly be in the conversation. I mean, on a good day, anybody could, but yeah, I'll stick with the same 5 you guys have. But my asterisk is if Optic or Team Diverge just has a great day, they easily make it. Okay, let's talk about. What'd you say?
What about Group B though, right, Gojj? Because it's funny that the more competitive group kind of also seems to be the easier one to maybe parse out the teams that you expect to get through. But in Group B, I mean, there's 3 that I can lean on immediately and assume. But I mean, who knows, right?
Let's
like you look at it.
Sorry, I was gonna say let's go Gary first on this one so that we don't influence it, because I know you and I talked a little bit before.
I would have said the exact same thing. I 100% would have said the exact same thing about Group A. I was actually thinking about it before you guys brought it up. So I mean, from Group B, this is such a weird and could really go anywhere. I mean, first Atlanta FaZe I think will qualify 100%. If they don't, then that's going to be the biggest letdown. They are definitely the best team in the pool. I'll put Tiberius, Xenon, IQ, Picnic, and Nick Cool. I'd say they'd qualify. I want to say Surge as well. Surge has Ken's, Brolic, Exact, and Jace. That's a very good team. Brolic and Jace too have been like coming up a lot out of recently, and they've been super cracked. I'd probably. Oh man, I mean it's hard. It's really hard to say. I think I think I want to put Rocker's team because I know. So Priesta has a good background in Warzone. When he played Warzone, he was very good. I mean, he held the quads world record for all of Verdansk basically. And he's obviously a pro. Standy, I think Standy's played a decent amount of Warzone. Looney, I genuinely do not know about, so I don't know how that'll go. But I still want to put their team there. I'll put their team there, and then
you have one more.
Then I probably want to say, I might say Blues team. I think I'd say Blues team.
Okay.
So not London, because you seemed hot on London earlier.
Well, I didn't realize the team. I mean, so London is Jukies, who is obviously a great Warzone player, but then Gizmo, Afro, and Nasty, which I don't think any of them have played Warzone. that's the thing.
That's kind of okay. So Katie, you want to go next? So I will say this, Unrational. I was in the exact same line of thinking as you, but Katie, go through your thoughts.
Yeah, so 100% I agree with Gary on the first three in FaZe, Seattle, and Tiberius. I think those are kind of the easiest picks. It really is 4 and 5 where things start to get a little bit tricky. Rocker is hard for me because, as you said, Prisa, he set a quads world record. Obviously, they have Blast, who, as a retired pro, does now compete in Warzone. Interestingly enough, I think, I haven't double checked this, but I think they may be the only team that's all current and retired pros. But Standy, I don't know if he plays Warzone at all. And Looney is really the one that is tough for me because I don't know if he plays Warzone. I don't think he does, much less Rebirth.
Yeah.
And I just think that could potentially be a pain point for this team, especially when you're going to be going up. You're not playing in Rebirth lobbies against random people, right? You're going to be playing against very, very good teams. And that is going to be my concern point for Minnesota. So I want to say them, but I agree. I feel like GOATs with Blue and Lovey and Zepti as well. I think you have to kind of lean on GOATs. So maybe, I don't know, maybe GOATs and Rocker for my 4 and 5, but I don't feel confident in Rocker as a pick.
Okay. I like that. These are the same teams I was thinking. I will say Goats needs quite a bit of credit. Blue, Lovey, Zepti have been playing together for a very long time, on and off for tournaments. Lovey and Blue in particular. Leonard, if you don't know Leonard, is a freak at Rebirth. He is so incredibly good at Rebirth. That's all he does. I believe he's got a couple records or was close to some records at some point, and played with Smixy in Chain Games Rebirth tournament and was doing some gross things. They qualified for the event, not necessarily on the back. I mean, Smixy's fantastic and their third was great, but Leonard really was putting on some crazy numbers in that tournament. And even in the main event, they didn't do amazing, but they had an incredible last game, which jumped them up to the top half. So I'd expect that team to do really well in Pool B, as well as Tiberius for sure were the top two from my side of things. I know a couple of these names inside Haha and Underrated, but I don't know them well. And I don't watch, there's not that many Rebirth tournaments. So I have, like, these people haven't proved themselves yet necessarily, right? I think the argument, and this is like a general conversation for us to jump into, I think the argument that multiplayer, like COD multiplayer competitors, whether they're CDL pros or otherwise, yes, they have the gunny. Yes, it's, you know, they're incredible players, they're the best at the game, whatever. I don't think that Rebirth is as one-to-one as a lot of people give it credit for to multiplayer. Yes, it's more akin to a multiplayer experience, but there's way more nuances with Rebirth in a way to like play it well than people give it credit for. And it honestly reflects Warzone much more directly than a multiplayer format, to where I think a lot of our Caldera only players will come into a Rebirth tournament and just slap people around. That's my thoughts.
Gary, what insight do you kind of have onto what Gojj just said, right? Because yes, you can say the comparison that it's closer to something like Hardpoint, for example, but what are your thoughts when it comes to these pros trying to enter into this? Maybe the things that they don't know, the things where they might excel. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I mean, I think a lot of the pros will do way better in Rebirth than they will do in Caldera. So I think putting them into something like this isn't going to be as surprising if you see a team of all pros like qualify or do very well in the tournament as it would in a Caldera tournament. Because you see lots of pros come in. I mean, even in Verdansk, we saw it all over Verdansk. Lots of pros would come in for the big tourneys and like wouldn't do good. But on Rebirth, we haven't really seen. So we're not quite sure how they'll do. But I think genuinely, I mean, the pros should be towards the top than a lot of these, than some of these, like some of the qualifying teams or some of the teams that just don't have as much talent on the roster. I think a lot of pros will surprise people.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that take. I mean, look, I'm here for some of the pros to come in and go, you know, drop the gunny on them. But we all know like the skill gap in Warzone is so incredibly small that they are certainly the best players in Call of Duty. Can they execute in Rebirth? We'll see. Like, we've seen examples on both sides, right? It took a while for people like Slacked and Apathy to get their legs underneath them in Warzone, but now that they are fantastic at the game, right? And,
yeah, exactly.
But then we've also seen somebody like Scump go into a solo dolo and win the whole thing without running any cheese classes. So like, there's a kind of double entendre there of like it could go both ways, and only time will tell. Now, it is worth noting the format too. Elimination is a point. It is a kill multiplier format. Second and third give you 1.5 points. Everything else, 4 through 10th, is just 1 times, and then it's a 2 times multiplier for first place. So what do you think about that format going into this event?
Yeah, it's horrible. It's a terrible format. I mean, like, for Rebirth especially, there's so much RNG in these zone polls,
Yeah.
and like, there's so many teams alive towards the end. I feel like there's like, within the last like circle, there'll be like 3 or 4 team wipes. You know what I mean? Like, there'll be like 5
Right.
teams,
Yep.
and like the multiplier is just gonna, like, whoever gets that multiplier is gonna get it within like 10 seconds. You know what I mean? Like, from being in 5th or 6th place, they'll go straight to 2nd place or something, because like all these teams are going to get wiped within like 10-20 seconds, because that's just how it's going to work. Especially being quads, there's less teams on the map, there's going to be less third partying, but there's still going to be like, I don't know. I don't think it's a good format. I think it should be I think Baka Bros did a really good job with their format. Their format was really cool. I think they could do something like that, but with like top 5. Maybe they could break down multiply with top 5, like 5th place 1.2, 1.4, 1.6, 1.8, 2x, etc. Something like that. I think would probably work best for quads. But like I said, towards the end is kind of like there's so much RNG on how the zone polls are, and like so many teams are just going to be wiped within 30 seconds of each other or whatever. So
Yeah.
I'm not personally a fan of the format. I think that could also lead to some teams that you're not expecting to do good.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think
if you get that luck on that poll, right, in a team, for example, if it's gorillas, and usually you would assume in a gunfight they're going to win that more times than not, but zone pulls them into an area where they're exposed and someone else has the positioning, you're going to lose that more often than not. But it's interesting that you mentioned that, Gary, because I think when we look at something like this, do you as a player, when you're in these situations in something like Rebirth, are you trying to plan actively for what may happen with that zone pull at the very end, or are you just kind of going with the flow and reacting as it occurs?
I mean, for like public matches, 100% just reacting as it occurs. I mean, if anybody, and I mean, people in my stream have obviously watched me play. If anybody in your guys' side have watched me play Rebirth at all, I mean, me and Bobby play all day and win probably 80-90% of our games, and we kind of just like we mess around a lot. It's not it's kind of just like thoughtless. We don't sweat too hard. Sometimes if there's like 5 teams or more in the end zone, then we'll end up sweating a little harder and like planning the rotations and rotating ahead with gas masks. And I think what you see most of is stim plays.
Yep.
But from a competitive standpoint, I mean, honestly, in these tournaments, it seems like a little bit before third circle closes. So once third circle closes is when the Rebirth closes. So a little bit before that closes is when we'll start to plan and try to get together instead of like actively sending it, and we'll try to plan to stick together and rotate together, because we start playing it like a normal BR then, right?
Yeah.
So it is a little more thought going into it.
Yeah, for
Definitely in the
customs.
competitive standpoint.
I will say this goes back to my point about like Warzone players finding it a bit easier. I think this format caters to Warzone players because it's a Warzone focused format where there's multipliers. It also caters to map knowledge. It also caters to how to use stims and gas masks correctly and time those correctly based on the zones. I mean, we've seen this a bajillion times in all of the thousands of tournaments. The $1.509 million that have been put into Caldera tournaments at this point, add on another close to 100k now, or right at 100k for Rebirth tournaments on top of that. Like, gas plays right now are meta. They're everything. Stims are everything.
Cringe.
And
they're very cringe.
There's most people agree with Unrational that they are cringe because it's totally different game style, and you can survive in the gas for just absurd amount of time. And when you have your multiplier focused on that 1.5 multiplier for second and third and then winning, I mean, once you get into the last circles, like, you might as well just play in the gas to make sure you try to avoid combat. Like,
I mean, one thing I'd like to point out is Skullface's team. They do that in every Rebirth tourney, right?
Yep.
They've done that in every Rebirth tourney. But the thing that I think anybody would agree with from the stims is that Billy, Timmy, Johnny, and Josh can, get second place from stimming in the storm.
Yep.
It is like It's like that's why I think everybody would agree with me that Sims should 100% be taken out.
Yeah.
100% be
Stims
taken out of the
remained,
tournament,
but they changed the storm to Apex style, where it increases in damage as the map comes to a close, to the point where in those final circles you can't be in the gas at all. Would you prefer that?
I mean, that would be cool, but like you would literally get in the gas and immediately die if that was the case, right?
Yeah.
So like someone, if you're taking in the storm, going into fifth circle and just sitting there waiting for the next rotation, like you
Mhm.
should be dead before the storm even starts moving.
I think
100%.
I think
I
there's
mean,
a. I was gonna say.
no, go.
I think there's a balance that we can have of like if you go Apex style, you can't sit in the gas at all. I mean, like even trying to rotate through like a building, clipping the gas could theoretically kill you if you don't have a gas mask with how hard it would be hitting at that point. But you could find the middle ground where it hits quite a bit harder. Maybe the stims don't heal you all the way, or they heal you about half. I mean, there's little things you could tweak to make them work. I think for Rebirth tournaments, it would make sense to ban stims. I would hate to see stims completely banned from traditional customs on Cultera, just because I like the way that they increase at least some semblance of a skill gap that we're barely holding on to.
I feel like it takes away the skill gap, in my opinion. I feel like in every way possible. And the sliding, is the stupidest thing in the world. I mean,
Sure.
You stim and then you can break anybody's camera. I get my camera broken by bots sometimes that stim and slide around a corner because you just can't expect it. I mean, it basically takes away skill gap. Like you can also sit in the storm and just stim with a munitions box and a gas mask and don't have to rotate whatsoever. Like it takes no thought process. You stay in one spot, wait for the zone to rotate back for you. I feel like in almost every single way possible, the stims have
So you want stims banned across the board?
Yeah, no, 100%.
So I think the only argument for them, which is what I was going to give, is that it does. I mean, the movement buff, which is you were calling crunch, which is totally fair. You can break cameras on anybody. A bot can break cameras. The only benefit to that is that movement is really the only delineation in skill at this point, besides map knowledge and like rotational IQ and stuff like that, because the gun skill is all about equal for anybody near the top. I mean, there are levels to it. So if movement's the only thing that can start separating people across the board in skill gap, stims can add to that. But I guess to your point, like the big question mark is like, does that even add anything besides an ability to slide and tank a bunch of damage and break a camera that is like a broken mechanic of the game? So
yeah, I would 100% consider it like a broken mechanic. I mean, you said like movement is a little bit of like a skill gap in a way. It's not really a skill gap because we're playing Warzone.
Yeah, we're definitely cutting hairs or treading through hair. I mean, like it is a tiniest of a skill gap, but
no, yeah. I mean, just in my opinion, I just from a competitive standpoint, stims just should not be allowed whatsoever. Because I mean, even if you couldn't go in the storm, and the second you go in the storm, you die. I still think stims are just busted. They should have never added that speed boost. It's fun to use. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It is obviously still fun to use to like stim and like get cracked, but like it takes away skill gap. You can kill anybody just by stimming. The amount of times that like I watch a kill cam when I die in Rebirth and it's some TikTok kid, he won't even like see me. I won't even shoot at him or anything. He'll randomly stim and just slide around a corner for no reason, right? And it's like, oh, thank God someone's here. I would have wasted my stim. Like they'll run restock stims and just stim and slide. I'm like, okay, this guy just came at me at 100 miles per hour, sliding through a door out of nowhere. Like you have no chance. You don't stand a chance.
Sure.
Especially, my mouse and keyboard players. I'm sure a lot of them would agree that it is one of the most busted mechanics in the game, considering that they literally have to break their wrist when someone sim slides on them.
Yeah, they are unbelievably hard to track already. Luckily, aim assist helps you out a little bit, but if you don't have that, you are toast. Like you need a full desk mouse pad, like XQC style, just swinging arms across.
Yeah,
I love it. That's a great point. Interesting. Well, okay, Katie, I mean, any questions you have, feel free to kind of finish up the conversation here. I want Gary to be able to go do his own stream. We've talked about most of the teams. We talked about a lot of the players today, and we've even talked about the rule set a little bit. Any other thoughts? I've got one more kind of like last question for us, but we hit most of the, this is for an emergency episode. This was pretty good.
No, I think this was great. I would just say, Gary, if you were looking at this kind of from the overall health of competitive Warzone in general, and I'm encompassing Caldera and Rebirth within this, do you think CDLR is something good? Do you think that you want to see more of it? Do you think it's heading in the right direction? What does this mean to you as someone who competes so heavily in the scene?
That's actually a great question, because I mean, I feel like we've been so spoiled with $100,000 tournaments all throughout Verdansk and even Caldera a little bit. That something like this is like, with them introducing the CDLR, it would have been cool if they would have made it a little bit of a bigger deal, like just prize pool wise. They have their World Series of Warzone. It would have been cool if they even made it 100K and did a LAN. If people qualified for the LAN, and then we ended up doing something like that. Because like, this is kind of it's not just another 100K, but in the same way it kind of is, right? Because we've had so many 100K tournaments. But I feel like it's a step in the right direction, as in Call of Duty is advertising so much, giving and they're giving new players a chance to succeed and be able to play against the CDL pros. I think it's very cool that they're getting each CDL team involved. I think that's definitely a step in the right direction, because I mean, there's 12 CDL teams. They're paying so much for those spots, and I think it's cool to be seeing them all involved. It'd also be cool to see if CDL teams would start like signing teams.
Yeah.
Like let's say, for example, like Tommy, Almond, and Ben all signed to the same team. Me, Scum, and Huskers all signed to the same team.
Right.
Obviously, it's not like super realistic, but I feel like it's a step in the right direction, and it would be cool to see.
Yeah, that was a perfect kind of leading question to finish off this topic, because I know Katie and I are going to be actually talking a lot about those types of topics, whether it's lands or otherwise, on Wednesday on our normally scheduled podcast episode. So Gary, thanks for hopping on last minute, talking through these teams. Excited to watch. Totally agree on most of your points. This is a step in the right direction. Could have been done better. Of course, everything could always be critiqued after the fact, but hey, at least they're starting to introduce some sort of competitive measure for Warzone. I mean, we've been trying to get something like this for, good grief, what, 2+ years now at this point. So it's Rebirth. Let's get after it. Excited to see you guys compete for LAG. I'm sure you'll do fantastic, and Katie and I will certainly be watching from the sidelines. So thanks for popping on, my man.
Yeah, thank you, Nico.
Appreciate that. Also, wait, I have one more question for you guys, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys have time for anything.
we're good.
Ask questions. Ooh, okay.
I just said, like, is there anybody that you're surprised to not see in this tournament?
Yes.
I mean, like,
there's
one person for me was like Destroy, for example. I'm very surprised that he wasn't in the tourney, even though I know he has been playing a lot of Apex recently. But
yeah, Katie, you go first.
Anybody else on your guys' mind?
Yes, a million times yes. I love that question. Smixy is one of those that comes to mind immediately. I mean, I did a CDL interview with her about CDLR, and I know that she went through the quals and did not qualify, but it's a bummer to me that I don't see Smixy in this. I know we can say people like FIFA, but since it's NA only, I'm just gonna exclude that, since that's been a known quantity for a while. But I also think people like Swish, again, people like Queen are some good examples of that. I love the Destroy example as well. But I mean, there's so many you could name. You could go through and just look at the Warzone earnings and start rattling off names. I think Jowo is another one of those.
Yeah.
But, Breadman,
those are the two I was going to say. I mean, you've got the like people near the top of earnings, if you want to look at earnings in terms of overall Caldera, like a Hisoka, like an Veiled or whatever, but those are the people that are went through quals and didn't make it. So there was,
to clarify, these are people that I would think would just be on a CDL team as opposed to qualifying.
I think Jowo in particular is the biggest one, because if you look at our teams here, some teams elected to go, we're keeping our CDL pros, they're playing, they want to play, let's do it. Some teams said, screw it, we don't give a crap, we want to win, or we want to do whatever we want to do, focus on Warzone people, and those Warzone people are getting picked up. I mean, a great example of that is Surge. Like, none of those people technically are signed by Surge. They gave Kins the like ability to pick, and she picked up a tried and true trio. I think they're going to do fantastic, probably like Exact and 4 and Jace. But, with the limited spots that Rebirth offers, you don't see Jowo at all, who plays a lot of Rebirth. Like, Breadman doesn't play that much Rebirth. He does sometimes, but like comparatively, he doesn't. Joe plays a ton, especially recently. The fact that he's not playing is super surprising. Some of the, and especially with, this isn't all competitive. Like there's some content focused things around this event, and Joe is huge in terms of streaming numbers as well as content, the ability and the quality of content he puts out. I mean, he's the biggest one on my list. Besides some of the other players that are signed to these orgs as Warzone content creators, right? Smixy, who went for the qual. We don't know the whole story. Maybe she said, you know, I want to play with these people. I'm going to go qual with them. I don't know. You know, we think of Queen Shadows, a part of Mutineers. Jesse Cook's a part of Mutineers, both signed as Warzone content creators that are not competing, especially with Mutineers, I believe, going full on. Yeah, I mean, they went full on CDL. Willet, Dav, Vivid, and Skies. So I don't know. I mean, maybe they left it up to the CDL pros, and some of the CDL pros said, no, we're out. We're not playing that. And then they went to Warzone. I mean, I think it was org by org. I don't think there was any limitations to it to some degree. Yeah. So interesting. Great question, though. So yeah, biggest one for me are some of the women in particular, but some of the players signed by CDL orgs not playing. And then number one is Joe. I'm blown away. Yeah. Joe did not get picked up by somebody.
Yeah, that's very weird to me as well. I mean, Joe signed to NRG,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Who was in cahoots with Optic, right? Or no, that was Envy.
No longer.
They were, but not anymore.
Well, they were with NRG a long time ago.
Yes, right? So. When it was Optic Chicago, and then now Optic Texas, rather.
So I feel like that's the one team that I think for sure would have reached out still, just because of like, I mean, Joe was on Hex's podcast. I'm sure there's still talk every once in a while. I mean, he played at the Texas or the Hex quarters for a week too when he went to Arlington event. But yeah, for any of the other teams, I don't know if they just didn't think about it, assumed that he'd be on something else, and like didn't reach out to him. I'm also curious. Breadman though is one person that I know. So for the Bacher Bros tourney, Breadman declined a spot because he wanted to give spot to people that actually play Rebirth, and he doesn't really like play Rebirth at all. So I don't know if it's something like that, or if he just straight up never got invited, or didn't want to play the quals, or what. But
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, you know, it makes sense for Bread. Joe doesn't make any sense to me unless he turned it down. That's quite a like we can just ask him.
That is true.
I'll just DM him.
Reasons why not for a lot of people. Some of them, like I would imagine most of them are probably innocent, more boring answers. That tends to be what it is, as opposed to the more salacious ones. I know Twitter loves to just grab onto those.
Yeah.
But there's a million reasons. I mean, we could just end up asking Joe, but I agree. I think there's just a lot of names here that you would expect to be on those teams that aren't.
So
but
another one, and I would say this name only because I've had conversations with him recently. I wasn't surprised to not see his name, but I wouldn't have been surprised if he was on here, was Neo Rooch. So Neo, who's obviously a part of FaZe, he doesn't compete and hasn't competed in a really, really long time, if maybe ever. I mean, it was like way long ago. But I think
he only played in the Anthem tourneys.
Yeah, but I talked to Neo recently, and he's been playing a lot of Rebirth. Obviously, he's been posting clips like crazy. I DM'd with him for a while and talked in his stream a ton, and he was like, "I'm ready. Like, I want to start competing again." Specifically in Rebirth. So if there's more Rebirth tournaments coming up, let me know. I don't know if that was ever conveyed to FaZe. I mean, they ended up having an incredible team, obviously. Super Evan, Booyah, Swag, and Biffle. It doesn't get much better than that in terms of experience. But I know everyone would love to see Neo compete. I would expect to see Neo in the next big Rebirth tournament, if not the following one after that.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that too. I mean, Neo is I played with Neo a couple times. He's a homie, and I used to play against him all the time in S&D. I mean, you know, he's always been a top player in like everything. I mean, in S&D, he was, you know, one of the like greatest S&D players at the time, and like back in like MWR, he would just absolutely destroy everybody. He'd sit on top with a Barrett 50 cal and just snipe everyone, and everyone can play. Because I mean, he's always been a good sniper too. I don't know, a lot of people probably don't know that, but he's always been an amazing sniper. But I'm curious how he'd do in like a situation like this.
And like every tournament is different, but this tournament has like every gun allowed pretty much, right? I mean, I think it's got shotguns. I'm pretty sure it's got shotguns. I'm pretty sure it's got snipers. I don't think there's any limits on the weapons, if I'm remembering correctly. Like, it's kind of the Wild West out here. So if snipers were allowed, this man would be clipping heads.
Well, snipers are allowed, right?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, they are allowed, so he could do all unspeakable things
for sure.
I know the biggest point of contention was shotguns in the quals, correct? I mean, I think I see.
I don't think
we got
crazy.
eBay.
Why don't they ban that stuff. Like, why?
So okay, I don't know how much time you have, Gary. I don't want to like limit you. I know you want to.
I don't care. I mean,
Okay. This is this is what I was gonna end the conversation with, but I thought, Katie, you did a great job doing this. And well, this is maybe like the bonus episode, right? Like this is the bonus part of this podcast. I want to hear your thoughts, our group thoughts, but your thoughts in particular, Gary, about general tournament formats. And like the idea behind, we asked Blast the same question. The idea behind people coming together, making a compiled group of rule sets for, hey, this is the Rebirth rule set you go by. Hey, this is the Caldera rule set you go by. And all of the, or most of the big players, as well as some other people in the admin scene, come together and make those rule sets so that people like Call of Duty or people like Twitch Rivals or whoever don't have to guess on a format that is maybe 3 months old and outdated.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that'd be really cool. I mean, I think for any Call of Duty League event, they've never had any rules. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I mean, but
yeah,
I definitely do think that is something that like we should do. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. But it would be something that I think we should do. Maybe some people will get together, but I feel like everybody's just on such different schedules with streaming and whatnot. It would be really hard to do. I mean, we could even do it on stream too, but I know Aiden's interested in doing stuff like that, so maybe I know. I'll post in the wager chat and see if somebody, if we want to get a few people together and try to do something like that.
I just think,
let us know.
I just think that like the problem at the highest level, of course, there's going to be limitations per event. Like some events need to be under, like I've heard from sponsors / Activision Blizzard / whoever's doing the event, this event needs to be under X amount of time. Like we need to do this event in 3 hours. So like that's going to limit what we can force. But this is such a player market right now that the tournaments can be almost not completely, but fairly well directed by players on what the rule sets are. I mean, for the last 10 events that we've done with Boom and some with eFuse too, they do votes on some of the rules before the tournament starts. Like if we just compiled our energies for like a moment and said, hey, these are the rules we want for these modes, and then tournament organizers could tweak if they have to according to the sponsors wants, it just makes so much more sense.
No, 100%. I 100% agree. That definitely needs to be something that we get done because, you know, nobody wants to play in these tournaments that have shotguns besides, you know, a couple people, right? None of the people that are consistently, you know, competitive and consistently winning and stuff want, you know, stupid stuff like that. Anybody that's competed before is probably a good way to say it. I feel like wouldn't want stuff like that. And we don't allow RPGs and shotguns and, you know, CDL, right? But yeah, I mean, that's just my opinion.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Great point. I like it.
So
I don't know.
Are we gonna release this now?
Yeah, we'll release it. We could talk forever and ever, but I appreciate you popping on, Gary, and excited to talk more in the future for sure. And good luck in the 100K because I'm sure you're gonna do fantastic.
Thank you.
It's gonna be a blast to watch, and yeah, we'll see you then. Katie, anything else before we end it?
No, thank you to Gary for coming on, especially last minute. We really appreciate it. I hope the rest of your stream is wonderful and you're showered in far too many subs.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to have to wait and see, you guys, what happens with CDLR next. Also, to all of the competitive Warzone players in chat, I know there's been a lot of you both chatting and kind of just lurking. Love to have you guys on in the future as well. Thank you for your conversation and your thoughts on it. And we'll have to see where it goes. So who knows? We'll wait to see what happens. And the 5 teams from each group who managed to make it out alive. Who knows? Maybe we'll get a little surprise or two.
Yeah, I think it's possible, especially with the crazy format. We'll see. All right, we'll check you guys later. Appreciate it.
See ya.